Welcome back to the next stage. Now that the first planking is done, what I've gone ahead and done is to sand back the hull to eliminate all the high spots, which the planks, as I have laid them down, have not left a perfect surface. So with the sanding block provided by the kit, it has sanding paper of about 120 or so, and I went ahead and sanded down the whole hull, and paying attention to the stern here to make it as flat as possible, as well as rounding off the bottom part right here to give it the line that appears in the plans. Down here, the plans specify that the hull is rounded off and then it ends up in a point as it goes up to the front. The problem was this area on both sides, which does not enable the sanding block to fit. So what I've done is with a piece of sandpaper around a dowel, in this case just an X-Acto knife, I've gone ahead and sanded the area right around here to make it as flat as possible. Then in the end I just went over the whole hull with the same piece of sanding paper of 150 grit, and make sure to sand it as smooth as possible. There are areas that are indented, again because the planks didn't lay down completely flat. So now it's a matter of adding some filler and then sanding again to make it as smooth as possible. This step is important, so it all ends up as flat as possible and close to the final lines, so the second planking doesn't have to bend or anything like that. So now that it's like this, the next part will be to add the filler to the sides and sanding it down. I'll see you on the next step when I add the filler. Now I'm applying the sanding filler on top of all the first planking. The way I'm doing it is by fourth, just so one part has time to dry before I add the other part. So I've done one side already, and now I'm doing this other side. I'm using a very fine filler. It covers up to 2 millimeters, and the way that I'm putting it on is with a piece of cardboard, just putting it on and then carefully flattening it all out along the hull. So it's pretty easy, just putting some of the filler on the hull itself and then extending it with the piece of cardboard all along the hull, making sure that it's as thin as possible. That way, if I have to, I can add more, which is pretty easy in a second layer later on. My intention is to do this twice in 2 different layers, depending on the result of the first one. Since it's very fine, it's very easy to spread it along the whole area. Just requires some patience to extend it everywhere. Right here. And there at the end as well. And specifically down here at the joint to make sure that it does cover, and this area right here as well, where the joint to the previous part was located. So it's pretty easy to add it all on. And shaking off the excess where there's no need for it. And that should pretty much cover the area. When that's done, I take a couple of minutes, like 3-4 minutes, and then I go along with my finger dipped in water and smooth it out so there's no obvious bumps or valleys, and it conforms to the planks underneath. It's a little bit time consuming, but the results are very uniform. So I just keep on doing that. The water redissolves the filler, so it makes it very easy to smooth out. Going along the whole hull. And there are the results. And it gives it a nice smooth finish. Taking it off from the places that I don't really want it. And that way the whole hull gets covered. What I'll do with this, now that it's pretty much flattened out, is to wait 24 hours, letting it to dry for 24 hours, and then I'll be sanding it down. This should level off all the holes that are left in the planking, and depending on the result of how flat it is, I'll add a second coat, or I'll go straight into putting the second planking on. Here's the result after having sanded off all the filler. I did this with a piece of sandpaper, 150 grit, just by hand, and it has taken off most of the holes that were left from the sanding, but there are still a couple. So I'll go ahead and do a second coat and sand it down again, and that should pretty much leave it all flush, flat, and without any bumps, to be able to put the second coat of strips and go on to the second planking. So after another coat of filler, we'll see what the results are. This stage is done. I've added the second coat of filler and sand it all down, and now it's all smooth and all the bumps have been covered by the filler. Not all of them, but this will make sure that the second planking sits flat. What I've gone ahead as well is to draw a couple of lines to use as guidelines, since at the top the planks will have to be two different planks, just like with the first planking, because they're not long enough. I'll make them all staggered, just in the middle, no need to do more, and that way also simulate the planking in a real ship. In the rear here, I've also marked a line a little bit behind the previous one, where I will finish the planking to then do the stern planking, as well as mark the line down the middle to know where the two sides will finish. To finish off, I've made sure that the center is sharp here at the front and then rounding off down at the bottom part, and the top of the rudder I've also made sure to shape it so the rudder will fit in. With all that prep work, it's basically starting with the second planking and step by step covering the whole ship. That will be the next step, so hope to see you then.